see some halftone here that I'm going to subtly draw back in with the pencil. I want to make sure the shape is fine enough. Back up. I'm going to leave it to where I work up this area and leave the rest of it kind of locked in, because if I take the whole thing to a full level of completion, it might be like watching grass grow at a certain point. Halftone there, it's a really pronounced shadow right there. Very specific edge that comes up. Here's a little lighter. Right there needs to be some changes in the shadow, but it's very subtle. So another thing about vine charcoal is that some of the marks initially off of a piece of vine charcoal go kind of dark, but because they're so easy to correct, I can just tap it a little bit with the eraser, soften it just enough to know, still know where my shape is, but soften it enough to adjust the edge. There's that little split that comes in there, shadow. I think about the direction of the mark, not just in sculptural terms, but in the sense that I don't want to lose the unity of the form that I'm trying to make. So by keeping these marks going all like in this area one direction and then another direction, it kind of keeps them all connected and unified. One thing about drawing things in light and shadow is that sometimes you probably will come in here and think, oh my God, these are boring objects we have to draw today, which is a valid thought. And trust me, I thought the same thing when I used to go into beginning drawing and painting classes as a student. But I think one thing to take from that is that if your understanding of the basic fundamentals is strong enough, you're going to kind of realize at a certain stage with enough experience, it's not necessarily what you're drawing, but how you're interpreting it, meaning how you're putting down your marks to show the relationships of light and darks, how you're putting down your marks to show line quality. So it's kind of how you draw it, not what you draw sometimes, that can make a drawing or a painting really interesting. If I draw this on toned paper like we're going to do in a few weeks, light logic and issues will still be there, but the feeling of it and how it kind of reads to somebody will be completely different. So think about it for what it is, and what you're drawing is light. You're not drawing so much an object, you're drawing a collection of light, because that's what's determining what's there. There needs to be lighter. Don't be afraid to use your fingers either. Just like kindergarten. forehead goes up in this direction. The muscle, the fibers of the muscle on the head go up in that direction. So I'm making more vertical marks, slightly going in diagonal, but for the most part they're going vertical. As I do that, this starts to look lighter. So I do the marks here, as the form kind of goes down and it projects out that way. We do a combination of those vertical and some of the hard diagonal. So what happens around this initial area is dictated by, or happens in that visual area, or initial area I should say, is dictated by what happens around it. So a little bit of dark in there. One thing to notice is, you guys can nothing is getting that dark. Even though this looks a little bit darker, it looks a lot darker based on what's above and below it. It's not to say you might have, not run into a drawing that does have things that are really dark, but lighter there. It's an issue of here where there's reflecting light that needs to be lightened up a little bit in the context of what's around it. And if you get to a point where you can't erase out anymore with this eraser, those hard white erasers, because they're so strong, can really pull out a lot of light. I would not start your drawing with the hard white eraser because you might pull out too much. That's why the kneaded eraser is so good. But you get to a point where it's just not pulling out the light that you want to, try the hard white eraser. And you're never going to get back to the original white of the paper. That's not the reason, or the objective. The objective is just to use the lighter underground, this lighter paper, to use to get your value relationship. So there's nothing up. If you look up there, nothing is pure white. Might seem it's a white object, but it's not pure white.
So what's considered pure white?
Nothing. There's no pure white in nature.
Oh.
That's a hard kind of thing to first grasp because you're no, everything, I see there's white there, but think about it, if you were to take that cast and move it to a different part of the room with a different kind of light, different kind of reflecting lights around you, get some different value relationships and some different color relationships. So it's never going to be pure white.
So that's what you got, like titanium white, wherever, with scale color.
It's
You
what?
have like titanium white and all kind of white.
They have different kind of whites. Well, if you're talking about oil paint, they have lead white, they have flake white, they have, flake white is lead white, but they have zinc white. Some of them are more transparent than others, some of them are a little bit warmer, some of them are a little bit cooler, some of them are a little thicker, some of them are a little buttery, more buttery-like. Those are the real differences in all these different kind of whites at the art store. But in reference to a painting, if you're painting that white cast and you just take a bunch of white, gob it right there, it's not going to really capture the light that's there. It's not pure white. So that's one of the reasons I have you guys study casts like this, so you can really start to look and see halftones that are there rather than really light, really dark.